Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is transgressive adventure fiction. And I think that if I say adventure fiction, people might get kind of the wrong idea of what exactly I'm talking about. The fiction that we're going to be looking at is mostly realistic, and there's not James Bond blowing up buildings or shooting guns at people. And it typically involves personal journeys. So, for instance, a person might take a boat adventure and go on a boat race, or a person may wind up doing certain things in South America. The writer that we're going to be looking at is Robert Stone. So I've talked about him briefly before, but I was unsure if I was going to do a video. Because of where we are in my channel history, I'm starting to run low on the number of authors for whom I've read all of their works, and I'm comfortable talking about Robert Stone without having to interrupt my other reading in order to reread anything. So, for those of you who are interested, I'm Mark, and this is Several Books. As I said, the writer we're looking at is Robert Stone. Robert Stone wrote 8 novels and 2 collections of short stories. I have read all of Robert Stone's fiction. He's written a memoir as well, and I believe there's a work of his essays that's been collected. But I haven't read those. I've just read all of his fiction that I know of that's extant. So what we're going to do is start out with Robert Stone, and we're going to look at his first novel, A Hall of Mirrors. As you can see, A Hall of Mirrors is here. My copy is a nice old hardcover copy, a used book. This book was made into a movie, I believe, in the 70s. And what I'm going to be doing with Robert Stone is reviewing all of his books in publishing order. And then we're going to go through, and I'm going to group them according to some different criteria when we do the A through F tier list. Hall of Mirrors is a favorite book of mine. I would consider it definitely an S tier novel. Either this or Dog Soldiers, I would say, should be on everybody's must-read list. This is very much kind of like a new Hemingwayan style of writing. He's very clearly influenced by Hemingway, but the sensibility is very different. So although Robert Stone's books tend to be sort of man's man oriented, we get a lot more vulnerability of the characters. We get open expressions of weakness that are much more authentic feeling, in my opinion, than we get with Hemingway. A Hall of Mirrors goes between about 3 different characters, or 2 main ones really that I can think of. And the first one is a young man who's in New Orleans, whose job it is to essentially decide who gets to stay on government benefits. When he first gets the job, he believes that what he's going to be able to do is to basically sign people up for benefits, and he's hoping that he'll move on to only helping people. He eventually learns that really the only thing his job is saving money on a budget, and so his job is predominantly to remove people from those kinds of programs. This causes the young man, who is a very religious young man, to have kind of a complete breakdown, and this becomes important later in the novel. The other story is the story of a musician, and he is a very a very active alcoholic. He's drinking a tremendous amount, and he meets a prostitute, and they start a thing. And while he's doing this, he becomes a shock jock radio DJ for a right-wing radio station. And he doesn't actually really pay much attention to what he says on the station, and doesn't actually believe much of what he's saying. But basically what happens is that he gets enmeshed in this kind of world, and then in the end of the novel there's this kind of huge celebration. And the young man gets involved in it in what's basically a terror attack. The guy who's the shock jock is no longer going to be working. And while this has happened, the prostitute that the man has fallen in love with is put in prison. And I'm just going to leave it there. There's not a whole lot else I can say. If you like Hubert Selby Jr., this is a very good book. This and Dog Soldiers are going to be right up your alley. They're both incredible novels. They are my two favorite books by him, I believe. I read Dog Soldiers when I was in college. I came back to Robert Stone a few years later, and now he's one of my favorite writers. There are a few books of his that aren't so great, but for right now, what you got to know is that Hall of Mirrors is an S-tier book. I love every minute of the book. I thought it was great. Lots of dialogue. The description is pitch perfect. Maybe the ending is slightly weak considering it's a first novel, but really this is an amazing book. It won an award when it first came out. So we're going to say A Hall of Mirrors is an S-tier book. The next book we're going to look at is Dog Soldiers, and as you can see, my copy is also a nice used hardcover copy. Good thing for these is that they stick around and last. I've only read the novel once. One of the reasons I am so concerned about getting hardcover novels like this is because they do stick around and you can reread them when you get the chance. And I would say that Robert Stone has a few novels that, in my opinion, are worth rereading. This is one of them. Dog Soldiers is going to be an S. This list was a little bit before the time of some people who hang out on YouTube, but if you remember Time Magazine's Top 100 since 1923 list, this book was listed on that list. This is about a journalist in Vietnam, and he gets wrapped up in the heroin trade. And he comes back to the U.S., and some stuff happens. He ends up getting tracked by some corrupt FBI agents, travels all across the country, and winds up in a situation in a cult. The drug use is there. Again, it's not glamorized at all. You're very much looking at like a Hubert Selby Jr. style of depiction about drug use. The thing that's really with Robert Stone, the thing that his novels do that, in my opinion, is the really interesting thing, is that the way he handles religion and religious experience is, in my reading, unique. I don't want to say that it's never been done before. I don't want to say that he writes religious fiction as such, religious fiction. But this, whereas A Hall of Mirrors, the first big religious experience, causes public chaos. In this, the religious figure is a cult leader, and this cult has collected guns and ammo, and they're ready to go to war with the U.S. government. It's a wild ride. The whole thing is clutching your steering wheel, screaming at the top of your lungs while you're driving 90 miles an hour down a highway or something. I've never really done that, but that's the image I see off the top of my head. So, A Hall of Mirrors, second book, is an S tier. Now, the third Robert Stone book is a book that I like much less. Here's the book. It's a Flag for Sunrise. Mine, again, is a hardcover copy. The unfortunate thing for me is that I don't have the nice dust jacket on this. Now, again, because it's a Robert Stone book, we're looking at religious conflict. And the religious conflict in this is around a nun in an unnamed South American country. And so we know that the U.S. relationship with this country during the period it was written in like the 70s or so, was a bit strained. The novel becomes a murder mystery. It's not exactly a murder mystery like a John Grisham or something like that, but it's very much a murder mystery, predominantly from the perspective of this nun and another man down in this Latin American country. I would have liked to have seen more of the erraticness to the religious faith that Robert Stone displays, but overall the book is enjoyable. It's just not his best. My other problem with the book is that the point of view changes too often, in my opinion. You do get used to his pacing. It's not like a major flaw. There are other flaws with the book that I think would probably be more substantive. But it is something that took me a moment to get used to. I couldn't always figure out right when it started with the different character perspectives. I couldn't always fall into the reading habit right away. But I think we could give this book probably a B safely. I'm going to be grouping books, and that'll make more sense when I get to that. But A Flag for Sunrise, we're going to go with a B. Robert Stone's next book is Children of Light. And as you can see, it's a vintage book. On the cover, we've got what looks like cameras, alcohol, and a clock. This book is Children of Light is a amazing book also. This is another book that deals very heavily with religion, in the sense that religion bleeds into kind of a certain madness and zealotry. And what the book's about is there's this I think he's a writer who is addicted to drugs and alcohol, and he goes out and he's involved with an actress. And the actress is, I think, schizophrenic or manic depressive. She has some type of mental instability. Basically, what you got going on here is that the writer figure ends up getting... He visits the actress on a film set for Kate Chopin, The Awakening. They're making a film of that. And the big conflict comes in when you've got like a very like Harvey Weinstein type figure, kind of ruling the set. So there's not anything too explicit in that direction, but the sleaziness of the higher ups in the film industry is on display, as well as the addiction, the debauchery, the transgressive attributes of these figures. Toward the end of the novel, the mal-afflicted young actress who's having the issues has a very much more specific issue. I don't want to give away too much, but she and the main character end up running off, and some stuff kind of happens because of that. So I would say that this is an S tier book. This is our third S tier. Okay. The last book we're going to look at from our S tier is Outerbridge Reach. My copy, Outerbridge Reach. This is a great book in a Hemingwayan style. The plot mainly consists of a character who is going on a boat expedition, a sailing expedition, and he's got a friend who like makes documentaries and things like that. There's a lot of drug use in the novel. It's a very much a transgressive novel in that sense. What ends up happening with the character who goes on the sailing expedition is that he goes off, and while he's in the ocean, he loses contact with people. And one of the way that he's able to maintain his sanity is one of the radio stations that he's able to pick up is like an evangelical Christian radio broadcast, and he really sinks into this. And again, stuff that happens when you're not totally sane sort of takes over the narrative, and it's again related to religion. In my opinion, this is an S tier book. It's not as good as his other S tier books. Maybe I would say it's better than Children of Light, but basically, this is an S tier book. It's good. I don't have anything negative to say about it. If you like his style, it's a very simple literary style. It's not simple in the sense that it's bad, but you can see the influence of writers like Hemingway and D.H. Lawrence on it. I really have the majority of things to say about this for me are praise. I don't even like sailing, and this is a great book for me. Especially if you like something like Joseph Conrad or Herman Melville, you might find that interesting. The next book that we're going to look at is a collection of short stories. And this collection of short stories is called Bear and His Daughter. And I'm going to give this an A. So Bear and His Daughter is actually a story about incest, which is pretty unsettling. And the relationship between a father and his daughter, who at a certain point had that kind of relationship. It's an okay story. It's a bit long, but it's pretty good. Not my favorite. There's a story in here, another one that I want to talk about, where it's a man who was in an orphanage and grew up kind of tough as nails and a bit of a boxer, gets in a fist fight, and then we're going to talk about the first story in here. And the first story in this book is one of my favorite short stories, period. So I'm giving this an A, yet it has one of my favorite short stories in it. Robert Stone is a solid short fiction writer. My issue is that none of his stories in the 2 books of his short fiction that I've read comes close to Misère. I think it's Misère and Misery. I'll tell you in a second. Yeah. But, is that Misery? Yep. And, Misery is about abortion. And basically a very religious woman steals aborted fetuses and gets them blessed because she thinks that they're going to be going to hell if that doesn't happen. So she gets a priest to bless them. I've never read a story like that. It's kind of far out there. It's handled very realistically. It doesn't seem silly at all. It doesn't feel as if it's just put there to shock you. It does shock you, but it doesn't feel like that's the intention. So really, what I would say is that this whole collection is worth checking out. But the first story is the best. If just to read the short story, I would recommend checking this book out of the library or something. Reading the short story while you're in the library, or take it home and send the book back after you read that story if you're not super into it. If you do like that story, you're going to like the other stuff in the book, but the other stuff in the book's not going to be quite as good. So we're going to give this collection of short stories an A. The next book that we have is called Damascus Gate. And this is the main reason I think, or one of the reasons I didn't know if I wanted to share Robert Stone, because the book is about Middle East and Israel. This is not as good as his as his other novels. I would say this is about as good as A Flag for Sunrise. The real crux of the narrative for us comes in by a reporter on religious news is going to do some studying of classic biblical sites and so on, and he seems very naive to the world around him. And then, since it's a Robert Stone novel, we end up seeing all sorts of crazy politics stuff come up, and there's drug dealers, there's violence, people die. It's not a terrible novel. It's not really his best. So this is a novel that, like I said, is similar to A Flag for Sunrise. There's a lot of stuff going on in it where it's jumping between different characters. It's really just that one main character who is that religious figure. When Robert Stone writes about religion, is him at his best. His characters who are religious and either have blind sides or something off about the way that they see the world is very positive. The problem with this and A Flag for Sunrise is that the religious people in the book are too rational. And he really excels when he's got these very religious people going off in these extreme states. And they see the world in a way that is completely unconventional. And with this and A Flag for Sunrise, what the religion does is kind of blind the religious person, the religious character in the book. So it's interesting. It's an okay novel. It's not bad. It's not really what he does best. So he's got two novels like this. There's lots of different characters. Very political external situation to the U.S. I think it's good. I'm going to give it a B, but I just don't really know what else to say about it. So that's what that is. The next novel that we're going to look at is Bay of Souls. And Bay of Souls, you should only read if you're a completionist and a hardcore Robert Stone fan. Yeah, I don't know what to say about this. I read it very quickly. That's about the most positive thing I can say of it. There's an allusion to James Dickey's Deliverance in this. And I saw that mentioned online, so I went out and read Deliverance. I hadn't read it before I read this. And I like Deliverance a whole lot more. So aside from that reference, though, you've got like a college prof who gets involved in, Latin American politics. The religious stuff doesn't really appear in this book that I can remember. And that's kind of the negative aspect of the book. Stone is best when he's writing about religion. He's at his absolute best when he's writing about religion making people do crazy, irrational things. He's still good, but not great when he's writing about people who are overly religious being blinded to certain aspects of reality because of their religion. He's, when not writing about either religion or very transgressive elements. For instance, there are drug use. I'm pretty sure there's drug use in this. I can't remember very well. But there's also some sex. It's a little But without that, a lot of stuff tends to fall flat. So Robert Stone is definitely a writer of religious fiction. It's just not necessarily Christian fiction. This is a D for me. I'm telling you, only read this book if you've read everything else that I'm going to rate except for the other D novel. He's got one more novel left, and that's a D also. But unless you're reading everything except for this in that novel, don't read this yet. The next thing we've got is another collection of short stories. This collection of short stories is called Fun with Problems. And Fun with Problems is a solid collection of short stories, and I'm going to give this an A as well. We've got some interesting boat story. There's some decent writing about people with drug use issues. No story in specific stands out to me except for stories where he's got characters coping with addiction and problems like that. Religion is not as big a focus on his short fiction. Simply, I don't think that Stone had a large enough canvas to work with. He, as I said already, and I've said multiple times, the guy is a spiritual writer. You can't read Robert Stone without any interest in religion. Not saying a specific religion, but you have to have some kind of awareness of how it can function in different people's lives to really enjoy him. These shorter stories are good. They are very transgressive, lots of drug use and sex and so on, a reference to things. It's not the best book ever, but we're going to give both of his short fiction novels, or his short fiction collections, an A. Okay, so the last book we're going to look at is Death of the Black-Haired Girl. This novel sucks. I'm going to give it a D as well. The novel's basically about a college professor who starts a relationship with a student. The student turns out to be, I think she's like an actress, and she might be a Christian Scientist. She's some form of Christian that is a minority form. You know, there are a lot of people who are that type of religion, obviously, but it's not a totally mainstream genre of faith. So I think it's Christian Scientist, but I'm not sure. Regardless, that's the whole story. We don't get a lot of stuff from the girl's perspective, so Stone seems to realize when he's writing this that if he's not writing about religion, he's kind of shit out of luck. But the problem is that when he's writing about religion here, the person who we want to see from their perspective is Maud. It looks like her name is. I couldn't remember. I saw it on the book. Instead, we get mostly from the college professor. To me, this does not read like Stone revealing his deep, dark secrets about, relationships with his students. It doesn't read like that at all to me. It seems more like some kind of attempt at writing a late career procedural of sorts. The murder turns out to be totally unexpected for what you'd think happened. The prof isn't the person. But that's a D tier. We're not failing this or Bay of Souls because it's Robert Stone. There aren't, in my opinion, many books I've read in my entire life that I would say were complete failures. There are probably 2 or 3 I'm thinking of, but aside from that, I just don't fail novels. I like reading too much. So now let's look at what this list looks like as ranking. Give me a second to get everything together, and we'll do that. Okay, so we're going to start low and go high. Robert Stone's worst books are not worth reading unless you're reading all of Robert Stone. That's Death of a Black-Haired Girl and Bay of Souls. If you're like on an airplane and you got nothing to do and it's going to be too loud for you to focus really, that's a good time to read one of these books. They're both really short, relatively. Stone's writing style is fairly simple. It's very Hemingwayan, very D.H. Lawrence. But these just are not good. They're not good books. So what we're going to say is Bay of Souls and Death of a Black-Haired Girl are D's. The next books we're going to look at are what I'm going to call the international politics books. That's A Flag for Sunrise and Damascus Gate. These are B's. You're getting politics from, say, like the 70s, 80s, 90s, from kind of a literate, newspaper journalist type figure. So they're basically liberal novels. You're not getting extreme opinions on anything. You're not getting anything totally unheard of. But I did want to show sensitivity to U.S. involvement abroad. But they're B novels. They're okay. That they shouldn't be why you read Robert Stone. I'm telling you right now that Robert Stone is he's in my top 5 favorite writers from the past, say, 40 years. And these are not the books that I'm recommending to you. I'm saying, as the guy who loves Robert Stone, that just Damascus Gate and A Flag for Sunrise are not enough to make you go out and read them. You should read them if you read one of the S tier books and you want to see what else he does. Because the S tier books have some similarities in my mind. He couldn't just continue to write those S tier style books ad infinitum, because you would become bored with the same kind of figure. After you read 4 of them, you're kind of like, oh, so it's this religious kind of epiphany and otherworldliness that overtakes the character, and they're insane, but you've already done this 3 times. So, A Flag for Sunrise and Damascus Gate, we're giving B's. For Robert Stone's A books, I'm giving both of his short story collections. So we've got Bear and His Daughter and Fun with Problems. He's not the best short story writer. He's certainly not my favorite. I think my favorite English language short story writer, that's a really hard title to gain, but probably at least in my top 3, I'll give special mention to Grace Paley and Joy Williams. So if you're talking about English language short fiction writers that I absolutely adore and think are, top of the charts, Grace Paley is definitely number 1 up there. There may be a couple other writers, but she's up on the top of that. So he's no Grace Paley. You're not getting quite the playfulness of speech and language, but you are getting solid short fiction from a writer who knows how to write damn good novels. So not every novel he wrote was damn good, but he had enough success that you can say that this guy knew what he was doing when he was doing it, and he had a good idea how to do it. So those short fiction books are A's. They're both fairly short. They're only about 200 pages apiece. I recommend them. If you're interested in short fiction, there are far worse models. And because of his knack for transgression and his penchant to write about us at our worst sometimes, there's a lot there you can go on. So if you're trying to learn to write, I'm not a great writer. I'm not an English teacher, but I think there are worse, like I said, worse models you can do. The last thing we're going to do is the S tier books. And I want you to keep in mind, because I'm probably a bit willy-nilly with my S tier books, I've got 4 of these. He wrote 10 collections of fiction, novels or short story collections, 8 novels, 2 short story collections. I'm giving 4 of these novels an S tier. Now, when I say that these are an S tier, I guess I'd say almost like not every S tier is equal, but it's more like not every S tier is the same. What I'm really saying is that this is a contribution to fiction that I think deserves to be noted. So my 2 favorites for Robert Stone are his first 2 books, A Hall of Mirrors and Dog Soldiers. But Children of Light and Outerbridge Reach are both also incredible books. These all deal with kind of different people working with a combination of like transgression, drug use, and kind of religious mania in a way that, I mean, it's the bee's knees. The guy just knows how to put these things together. So when he's writing about religion in this way, essentially you have people coping with the loss of faith, you have extremist religious beliefs, you've got terrorism, you've got all sorts of just crazy stuff going on, coupled with we ourselves not in our best states, people doing drugs and so on. You put it all together, it's a bang up novel. So the four S tier books we've got are A Hall of Mirrors, Dog Soldiers, Children of Light, and Outerbridge Reach. All right, guys. Well, that has been Robert Stone. I'm going to say that I'm starting to run low on authors where I've read an entirety of the corpus of somebody's work. L'Oeuvre entière, par exemple, or if you want. We can still do a Toni Morrison. I want to reread Toni Morrison. I'm rereading Virginia Despentes slowly. Her novels are mostly short, but when you have to read 10 of somebody's novels to have reread the person, reading 10 novels is like, okay, if I don't read anything else, these are all like 200, 250 pages, I can read 2 a week, maybe, you know, and they're in French. Now, they're all available in English, which is why I'd be sharing her, but I'm looking at that. I'm looking at rereading at least some of Welbeck, if I do a Welbeck video. I'm happy to do a Welbeck video. As I've said, he's not actually loved in France. I know a lot of people who are interested in contemporary French fiction are interested in Welbeck. But he's in a very public way made an ass of himself many times. And not everybody who speaks French is just enamored with that. What I'm also looking at is there's a Belgian writer named Jean-Philippe Toussaint, and I've got almost all of his books in possession now. I'm thinking of doing a video of him. But what I'm going to probably start doing, because I don't want to limit myself to only reading, you know, and reviewing 10 books at a time, what I'm probably going to start doing is doing reviews of just specific books. So that should be forthcoming. I'm not sure where I'm going to start with that. There are 1 or 2 other authors I'm not sure about. I could do, I could not do. But basically where we are is that several books is for the next couple videos, maybe, or sometime in the next month, I'm going to be focusing more on specific works by people. And then I'll try to make more of these kind of big videos where I'm going through all 10 or 15 of a person's novels at a time. And we'll go from there. For anyone curious, this shirt is Antonin Artaud, and I got this online, so that's my author print t-shirt for today. I like bright colors, and they're kind of feminine, but for me, pink is just quite alright. Alright guys, thanks for everything. Please like and subscribe, it really helps me. So I've heard. I'm still trying to build up my audience. You know, I don't have a huge amount of subscribers, I got a few. Thanks for everything though, and you guys have a great day. Bye-bye. Several books out.